Handing over now to Anna Cleaves, also from the UK, science educator and secondary and university in secondary and university, promoter of girls' science education. She's going to present the research that Laila and Anna have done together on the National Health Service, the health provision in the UK on this issue. Welcome, Anna Cleaves.
I just want to start by saying, how did this research come about? Well, I was at a monthly WHRC meeting, UK, and I went into the NHS group because I'd heard some of the things that Laila was saying. And Laila was telling us about Annex B. And she said, people can go into the inpatient ward based on their gender identity. And the commitment to ending patient mixed-sex accommodation, where hospitals have to report any breaches of single-sex accommodation. So not only are people entitled to single-sex accommodation, but if there were any breaches of single-sex accommodation, then they have to be reported every month. I was absolutely amazed. The National Health Service, the NHS, staffed by qualified doctors, qualified nurses, managers who ought to know the law. Like so much that has been sneaked in without parliamentary scrutiny in this country, this was brought in because activists actually anticipated a self-identity law. They thought there would be plain sailing, and fortunately there wasn't. I have a scientific background. I have lectured in medical physiology. I have worked as a toxicologist. I have done research and finally became a science educator. So there were three areas that I found absolutely shocking. One, I was told that this was infant psychology. Susie Green of Mermaids transitioned her 4-year-old son. He told her at 4 years old, "Mummy, I made a mistake. God made a mistake. I'm meant to be a girl." Now, what would you do? Would you get his external genitalia cut off? Would you put him in a dress? Of course you wouldn't. Anyway, this was the child at 18 years old. I am a woman. It's in my DNA. Sorry, it is not in your DNA. Whatever you've done, external experience, anything that you've had done, your mutilation, your hormones, everything, you are XY. You are male. So, intersex conflated with gender is the second thing that really gets me. Intersex leads to inaccurate ideological concepts such as assigned sex. Determined at conception, sex is determined at conception. It is objectively observed and recorded. When it suits the political agenda, we heard from our Chinese sister last week, prenatal sex determination is the basis of sex selective abortion. That's why there are 120 males to 100 females in China. So these aborted girls never got the chance to live, to grow up, and to say, well, actually, you know what? I'm a boy. Fact. Intersex affects 1 in 4,000 of the population, 4,500. That's 0.02%. And even if it's a bit more, 0.01, very, very low. The trans lobby comes back with, oh, well, it depends on how you define intersex. No, it doesn't. It does not depend on how you define intersex. Intersex is a medical condition. When the features of intersex exist, they indicate a medical condition. XX is female. XX is an intersex female. XY is male. XXY is an intersex male. Reproductive organs and genitals do not develop as normal. And then decades of the sex brain. The feeling of being in the opposite sex resides in the brain. How could the NHS swallow this nonsense? But neurosexism has flourished. Cordelia Fine says male and female brains look different in a PET scan. So if you want the answer to persisting inequalities, don't look at the society, look at the brain. Experiments have been poor, easy to discredit, and have fueled a load of popular sexist literature, which happens to demonstrate that girls should do the caring at home with no pay and they should be in caring jobs with low pay. The women have a more active amygdala when reacting to fear. I'm not surprised about that. They're more fearful. They've got a lot more to fear. So how do we get from that to, you know, men who have an active amygdala are female? Well, let's look at the overlap. There is a massive overlap between the activity of the amygdala of females, higher, and males, lower. But there is this massive interlocking, okay, an overlap. This is the same as height. There are tall men, there are short women, women are shorter, men are taller. In between, there's a lot of overlap. So what they're trying to say is if a woman is tall, she's a man, and if a man is short, he's a woman. I mean, that's what nonsense it really is. So my, you know, sort of route into this was Laila telling me about this. And I said, do you know what? It's all conjecture and circular conclusions. So let's have a look at some of these trust websites. Surely they can't be introduced in Annex B. So we looked at 52. There's about 200 odd NHS National Health Trusts in England. We covered all the English counties. The 52 trusts represent about 150 hospitals. So what did we want to find out? Do members of the public have easy access to their rights when they come into hospital as an inpatient? So we scanned the websites for that, the trust website. Do they know that they have a right to single-sex accommodation, the right to the same-sex practitioner, and the right to a chaperone? And we coded our data into 4 groups. Now, the first group were completely uncompliant to single-sex accommodation. Brighton and Sussex University Hospitals Trust were quite typical of Group 1. It was absolutely impossible to find the rights of patients to single-sex accommodation on the website or in the patient information. Gender reassignment was quoted as gender identity, and the statement, no one of the protected characteristics has higher priority than any other. Really? Oh, yes, it has. Sex is an exception under the UK Equality Act 2010. Remember, single-sex accommodation is mandatory in the NHS. And under Annex B, until we got Annex B slipped in 2019, sex was recognised in the NHS as a legal exception to the Equality Act. What do we have on their websites and in their hospitals? Staff unsure of a person's gender should discreetly ask where a person would be most comfortably accommodated. Never mind about half the population that wouldn't feel comfortable. How about the other patients? Was it okay with them? Never asked. Most important was the gender identity. Now, breaches of single-sex accommodation must be reported. How can they report accurately when men who think they are women are allowed a choice of ward? They just can't do it. It's impossible. Group 2. Now, here, there was some information on single-sex accommodation, but no declaration of, finishing mixed-sex accommodation on the website. There was no information about the right to a single-sex practitioner. And when they referred to the 9 protected characteristics, hey-ho, sex was replaced by gender, which is not the law. Okay, so that was category 1, completely uncompliant. That's half of the 26 trusts. It's half of the 52 trusts, which is 26. Category 2 was a quarter, 13 of the trusts. Category 3, now what was category 3? There was no declaration. There was the right to single-sex accommodation, but there was no information about single-sex practitioner. So there was the correct depiction of, so I would say category 3, they were nearly there. Category 4, everything in order. How many? 6 out of 52 hadn't swallowed the Annex B. So we made some recommendations that they should, review this Annex B. And what can you do if you live in the UK? Look out your local NHS trust, look on the website. And if the information cannot be grouped into group 4, in other words, completely compliant, please write and complain. So, this is building at the moment, and hopefully the more people challenge their trusts, the better. I don't know how you're going to get on with Brighton and Sussex, though. They look pretty committed to Annex B. But anyway, that's what we did, and that's what we found.